Oh, don't cry. Hi guys, so today I'm going to do my birth story, and here's little Aurora for anyone that doesn't watch our vlogs. She's a little bit lively at the moment. I think she'll be wanting some food soon. Hello. But yeah, so I was asked if I was going to film this, and I said yes to the person who asked, because I did really want to film it. I'm going to scoot you down a little bit. There you go. Because yeah, feed. I did really want to film it, but I am also sort of very aware of the fact that I didn't have a typical birth, and sort of hello, and it was a bit unusual, and yeah, it didn't go as planned. So this isn't one of those videos where it's like you'll find a happy little montage of Aurora coming into the world, because sadly it just didn't happen in a way where I envisioned it. Although I'm very happy, and you know, look at the fact that you're here. Look at you smiling. Yeah. So I'm very happy that she's here, and the way that she came is just the way that she came. So what happened was we needed an emergency C-section at 35 weeks. What happened was I'd gone to have a midwife visit on the 28th of June. What happened was on the, oh hello. Hello. On the 28th of June, I went and saw the midwife in the morning. It was about 10 o'clock. All my appointments were like first thing in the morning. But between 9:30 and 10:30 my appointments were, so at 10 o'clock I went and saw the midwife. What are you doing? Oh, okay, nice. So yeah, so about 10 o'clock I went and saw the midwife, and we chatted about what I wanted my birth plan to be like, because I hadn't fully decided and I wasn't sure. So we spoke a lot about water birth, because I was quite up to the idea. I just knew that I wanted it to be like as natural as possible, and I'd sort of started to get myself into that mindset of I want to give this a go and do it as naturally as possible. And because having a water birth was kind of a natural pain reliever, I figured that I would sort of look into that option and give that a go. So I left with sort of a semi idea of what I wanted, and we talked about pain relief and that sort of stuff, and the idea was I'd go home and I'd speak to Paul about it all that night, so he knew what my plan was, so that if I did end up in hospital and for whatever reason I couldn't say my plan, or my plan wasn't being stuck to. Oh, are you pondering there with your little hand under your chin? And I couldn't stick to my plan, he could tell people and be like, she really wanted this, I know she's asking for something else, but this is what she really wanted, and unless it was medically necessary, not to deviate off my plan. So I'd been to the midwife, spoke about all that. I'd had my measurements done, all my checks. Aurora moved quite a bit during the examination, because she always did. Whenever she had a heartbeat done, she'd always kick like where that little monitor was. So you know, everything was fine, and I had no concerns, neither did the midwife. Nothing was wrong at all. And then I went into town, because I often went into town after my midwife appointments, because one of the people I used to work with before I went on maternity and left that store for another store, would be going on break, so we'd have dinner together. So I texted her and said, yeah, I'll be up town in about half an hour, like I'm big, fat and frumpy, so can we just go somewhere close to the bus stop for dinner? So we went into Costa, and like we had a sandwich, coffee, chatted away, night away, all good. And like I was speaking to her about the possible water birth and stuff like that, and she was like, yeah, that sounds cool, like everything was fine. And then I was walking around doing a bit of last minute shopping. I thought I could get her some more vests and onesies and stuff like that. This was before we knew who you were going to be. me, and I was just wearing grey and white. So I thought, yeah, I'd go around and sort of get her some more basics really, for her clothes. And as I was walking around, I sort of felt liquid, and I was like, oh god, please don't say I peed myself in the middle of town. So I rushed to the nearest bathroom and found the tiniest spot of blood. So I was like, right, okay, that's not normal, but it's not anything I was too concerned about. Like, I had spotting early on, and I kind of had spoke to midwives and various different nurses about what to look out for if it happened again later on, and they said a small amount of blood, probably fine, probably nothing to worry about, only to worry if it was persistent or, you know, carried on coming, whatever. So then I made my way out of the toilet, and then by the time I'd walked past, don't fling yourself about, by the time I'd walked past the store that my friend works at, I felt a lot more. So I rushed in, gave her all of my bags, like I was carrying a handbag and like a little bag that I'd brought some shopping in, and said, keep these, give me your keys, I need to use your staff toilet. So I went upstairs, and there was quite a lot more blood, and there were some clots in it. So I rushed back out, grabbed my stuff, gave her the keys and said I'd text her later, because she knew it was something serious. I wouldn't have gone into the shop if it wasn't. So I ended up calling Paul because I was so scared and I didn't know what to do, and I was like, babe, I'm bleeding quite a lot in the middle of town, like what do I do? So he said, I'm actually quite close to a sort of a drop-in doctor's centre, basically, if yours is full or you can't get an appointment. So he went, walk there, because it's only around the corner. I live in quite a small town, so like everything's quite compact. So he said, walk around to there and I'll get out of work and I'll come and pick you up from there. So that's what I did. I walked there and they said, unfortunately, we can't see you, you have to go straight to your midwife unit. And luckily I had been to the midwife that morning, so I had all of my green notes on me. So I called up the triage unit and was like, look, I'm bleeding, it's red, there's some clots, it's quite a lot, what do I do? And I spent about 20 minutes talking with various different nurses, and they were concerned there was no pain, because there wasn't. I really wasn't feeling any pain, I felt absolutely fine. But they were like, bleeding that much isn't normal, so you have to come in. So what happened was, we made the journey there. It takes about 10-15 minutes in a car. Parked up, got took into triage, and I got hooked up to all these monitors. One was doing like my heartbeat, one was doing her heartbeat, and one was checking for contractions. There was no contractions, so labour hadn't started. I wasn't supposed to be in labour, like I was only 35 weeks. And all of the movements for Aurora and her heartbeat were all fine. And for me it was fine, and everyone was saying like, if we looked at you, you wouldn't look ill. But when I walked in there, they were like, oh, give me your pad and underwear with the blood on it so we can see it. And I was like, well, give me a hospital gown and you can have my jeans as well, because I had leaked through everything. There was loads. And they were saying that the amount of blood that is coming out of you is not good, and you should be looking dangerously ill, but you look fine. So they actually just got another doctor coming in, because it was about 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that, by the time we'd got to the hospital. Because I don't think I started bleeding until about 2 o'clock. And then I had like that all unsure moment. And so yeah, so it's probably about 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that. And they monitored me for about an hour. And then another doctor came round, and he was quite a senior doctor, and he went, look, We don't know what's causing this bleeding. It's not normal. You need to have your baby took out of you. You're going to have a C-section. And I was just like, oh my God, no, like this wasn't what I planned. Wasn't there something we could do? But because they didn't know what was going on, they're like, the best thing to do is get your baby out safely rather than leaving it and something terrible happening. So I had to sort of quickly mentally prepare myself for that. And I think about 10 to 7, something like that, we were wheeled down into theatre. It really didn't take that long at all, because Paul was going to go back home and get me some like nighties, because I was obviously going to be kept in, so he was going to get me some nighties, he was going to get something for Aurora to wear, he was going to get me some food, all sorts, but it all just happened so fast. So think about just before 7 o'clock we went in and I had a spinal block done, which is the weirdest thing in the world. Oh, are you hungry? Are you hungry? No. It is the weirdest thing in the world having a spinal block. Hello. Because it's kind of like having an epidural, so you get numbed. But instead of having constant needling you, they give you one great big shot into your spine and it completely numbs you from like up here all the way down to your toes. And I can remember the anaesthetist going, okay, can you lift your legs for me? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And I tried and I couldn't, and I was like, oh my God, my legs don't work. Like, that's how weird it is. And to check that it's worked properly, they spray this really cold spray on your arm and then go all the way from your feet all the way up your side, asking you when you could feel it. And I honestly couldn't feel it until like my boobs, so I was completely numb. But it's also weird because you can still feel like all the tugging and stuff. So I've laid down on this bed. They've allowed Paul to get in some scrubs, so he's sort of right next to my head and I'm lying down. And he's telling me how it's going to be okay and everything will be fine. And I've got these sort of sheets that go up from here so I can't see anything. But I can see like the sheets moving and like doctors tugging and stuff, and I can feel my stomach moving. And within about 5 minutes they'd chopped everything through, pulled her out, and I heard her cry for the first time, and I burst into floods of tears because I was just so happy, because crying baby is a good sign when they come out. And she was alert and well, really. And they brought her over so I could see her, because we didn't know what would happen, so they were like, oh, it's a girl, here you go, presented her. And I can't really remember, but I know skin on skin is important, so I do think they put her on me for a little bit. But obviously I was heavily medicated, so I do remember them taking her away quite early because she had to have all of her own checks done and stuff, because she was early and there's a lot of things they have to check. Yeah, so they took her away and she got weighed, and she was a small baby, obviously she was 5 pound born, and everything else was fine. They wrapped her up in quite a few blankets because she was cold, put on a little knitted hat, and left her under what my partner calls a toaster, which is basically like there's a bed, for, like a crib thing for the baby to go in, and then just above that was like a heat lamp basically. So she went on that and she stayed on that for the majority of the time. Then I was all being stitched up, and during that Paul went with Aurora into a recovery room and I stayed in theatre for about another half an hour maybe. She was born at 7 minutes past 7, and I think I was still in surgery for another half an hour to 40 minutes. And then we were in the recovery room. I can't remember her being put on me again because I was on a lot of drugs. But I do remember being wheeled out of recovery room to a triage room at around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I do remember having her on me, so I do think that's possibly when I gave her my first breastfeed. Not that that went very well at first, but yeah, so then I ended up on a ward, and I can't remember much into the morning when Paul was allowed back, because he left at 10 o'clock, something like that, at night, because they weren't allowed to stop, so he had to go home. And partners were basically allowed 10 till 10, so he came back at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd already packed Aurora's bag for the hospital, so he brought everything of hers, and he brought little bits of mine that were ready. Like, he brought me a night dress, some slippers, loads of granny pants, and sort of like maternity pads and stuff like that. Because although they'd sorted everything out, I was still bleeding quite a lot. And yeah, that was sort of it, and I was in hospital for a few days. She had to have her hearing test done twice. She did have to have a lot of blood sugar tests, so she had her heel pricked every 2 hours while we were there for I think about 2-3 days. That was to check her blood sugar levels. It was horrible because they stab them with a needle and then try and squeeze blood out of their foot, and they cry, and it's not nice. But everything else sort of seemed fine. We had a bit of trouble with breastfeeding, but I eventually got that before we left. And yeah, so basically I've got my notes here so I could tell you what happened to me. So she was classed as a premature infant because she was born under 37 weeks. She was classed as having a low birth weight because she was between 1 and 2.5 kilograms. So she was £5, I think it was like about 2.25 kilograms, something like that. And what happened was, where is it? Oh, she weighed 2.28 kilograms. Where is what happened? It's somewhere on these notes. Yeah, I had an antepartum haemorrhage. So basically they explained it as my placenta had come apart and was hemorrhaging inside me. So it was a good job we went in, really. And yeah, we did okay after that. She was low birth weight. She's still quite small, and she only weighs like £8.10, which is typical newborn weight. But yeah, so we had kind of a bumpy entrance into the world. I will put some pictures in because we've got some of like Paul in the scrubs and me just after they've took her out, and one where I first hold her for the first time and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't a typical birth at all, and it was kind of scary when I think about it, but at the time I was quite cool and collected, and I didn't want to stress any more than was necessary, and I kind of knew I'd be in good hands anyway, because we'd gone to a different hospital than my local one, which has had their maternity ward shut down. So I knew we were in good hands. I knew everything would turn out okay. I had sort of faith in that. And yeah, we were in there from Wednesday night till, so either Saturday or Sunday, middle of the day. I can't quite remember. They thanks to all the drugs. It's a little bit hazy, but yeah, we're obviously fine now and perfectly happy. So yeah, that was my birth story. Not your typical one, but for anyone, I will say, for anyone who ends up having a C-section, they are not as scary or terrifying as they may seem. I remember when the midwife spoke about a C-section and I was just like, no, never, I wouldn't do that, like why would I elect to have such a surgery? But when it was forced upon me, and now I think about it, it wasn't a bad way to bring in Aurora, although I do feel like I missed out because I didn't get to experience a birth, I didn't get to experience a contraction, so that does make me a little bit sad, but I got my perfect bundle of joy in the end. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!